So I've watched a bunch of your videos, John, and I kind of see a niche that's missing associated with various times. You've obviously covered the early stuff quite well, but the later stuff and stuff leading into the book, I think are, ongoing things that are worthy of conversation. So,
Anyway, so the agenda is yours, so feel free to ask
okay.
me.
Well, I was interested in starting talking about the Esquire article because that's how I found out about you. And I've always been fascinated by the Esquire article because it put you together with a bunch of freakers at the time, some more famous than others, but people that have gone into infamy through the Esquire article. In terms of the Esquire article, do you keep in contact with anyone from that original article?
Yeah, I'm in touch with Denny, but Denny's hard to reach. I keep leaving the messages. I want to interview him
Mm,
on my YouTube channel,
certainly.
but I've not been able to coordinate a meeting time with him. He hasn't got a computer, so if I meet with him at all, it'll be just over the phone.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I always assumed that he would kind of continue into technology, but
Yeah, there's no computer. Does him a need for it. He can't see.
I guess so. But people that can't see also use computers as well. I mean, it's not
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
anyway. So certainly the Esquire article for me was just absolutely seminal. I got it through the Jolly Roger handbook, which you might remember. At the time, a series of text files of which the Esquire article was relatively central.
I've
Bunch of
never heard of the Jolly Roger. I mean, I think I vaguely heard about it, but I'm not sure exactly what it is.
It's a collection of text files, including your Esquire article, basically making bombs, growing weed, a bunch of nefarious activities with
Is
your
this
text file.
is this an Australian thing?
No, no, no. We got it in Australia, but we got it in Australia through Amiga download sites and through bulletin boards. It was pretty popular amongst bulletin board systems, just because it had so many interesting kind of stories. And certainly your Esquire article, for me, I print out the Jolly Roger, sewed it together in a paper booklet, and basically carried it around so much that it got brittle, because I would just read it. And you were part of that. So, I mean, that's the way I heard about you initially, was through the Esquire article.
Yeah. Then I got involved in the cypherpunks when I met Brian Balendorf, and Brian was part hosting of what they call the SF Raves newsletter,
Certainly.
and that's where I joined the rave scene. We got weekly reports on about 6 or 8 raves in the Bay Area, and where to go and information numbers to call for directions.
Was that part of Hyperreal? Hyperreal.org?
Python Real, what's that?
Hyperreal,
Oh, Hyperreal.
Hyperreal dot
Sure.
org, because certainly all that was resourced in Hyperreal in the, mid 90s, early 90s, mid 90s. And I think SF Rave was the part of Hyperreal that, maintained itself. It had an archive as well as other things.
Yeah, I started to port the PGP program, which was a shell-based program,
Hmm.
into a Mac type program. I never got it finished though, due to financial difficulties. But that was during the time that Apple laid off thousands and thousands of people,
Oh, yes.
and that completely killed my opportunity to find work.
Yes.
You have like thousands of Apple employees running around looking for work. I can't compete with that. No way.
Well, it's Steve Jobs rejoining, basically. The two things are interconnected. He rejoined and laid off a bunch of people at the same time. I think that was slightly after your time in Australia, though. Your time in
Yeah,
Australia was in 95. Um,
that was around 98, maybe
yeah,
98.
that was when Jobs let the people go.
Yeah.
Um, so what are your best memories about Australia?
Oh, the people were amazing. The food was amazing. The places I went to were amazing. The raves were amazing.
There were lots of raves, yes.
Yeah, and I really loved the rave scene there because they're different. The music is a little bit different than on the US. They had what they call happy hardcore, which is really
Certainly,
faster beats.
yes,
And I was more into the house and the trance scene, which was around 120 to 150 BPMs.
certainly.
So it was more energy. The raves were, and I was really a high energy person. I can remember they had this weekly rave at the 1015 Fulton Street in San Francisco called Community.
Hmm.
And I went to a community rave and raved till about 1 or 2 o'clock. And that morning, I was scheduled to take off and go to Australia. That would have been Thursday morning. but Thursday morning was Saturday in Australia.
Yes,
Because if you count the 17 hours it took me to get from San Francisco to Sydney, you count that, plus you count the crossing the international date line,
certainly.
I arrived in Australia on Saturday.
Yes,
I had not slept at all since that rave party. I stayed awake all night. On the flight, I couldn't get much rest because the flight was, as I was going across, I have this GPS thing, and I looked at the map. I said, oh my God, we're only at the equator. We're halfway there. And I said, Jesus Christ, what a long flight that is.
it is a long flight. And it's interesting actually because Qantas does the flight very frequently. You must have been flying United or Continental or something like that. They always hit the turbulence, whereas Qantas will try to avoid the turbulence by going up and down.
Oh yeah, I went from San Francisco to LA, and then from LA, the big old flight to Australia. And once I was there, everything was backwards.
Yes,
Drive on the left-hand side of the road. The moon's upside down. Water goes down the drain in the opposite direction because we're on the other side of the Coriolis effect.
certainly.
The sky was different, and everything was just opposite,
Yes.
which was really strange.
Yeah, the air smells differently as well, the eucalypts, and there are things that are very uniquely Australian, and of course I acknowledge all of those. But I think the people are very different as well. I think the distinction between
Oh, I
people
love
in
the
this
people,
country and
man. They're
Australia.
so great.
Yeah, yeah,
Like when they say, "Good day, mate."
yes,
You
yes.
say a kid Australian.
I
I
don't
say
have an
it.
Australian accent. I can't do good day, mate. But I
Okay.
know well what you're saying. Anyway, basically, this was my first interaction with you. It was also my first opportunity to take a bunch of photos. I know this photo on the back of the book, for example, is one that I took of you. Where is it?
Yeah,
Where is
I
it?
remember that.
Yeah. So, I basically was one of the first people to put anything about you online as, in terms of a history of who you were and these kind of things digitally.
I got interviewed while I was in Australia, but not as a phone freak, as a dedicated raver.
Certainly.
And I got written up in BPM magazine and a couple other places. And I only had one interview, as I remember, that had covered anything about my past as far as phone freaking goes. And that was it. I don't remember who the article was. I don't think it was you, it was somebody else.
It was someone else, but the distinction was I put mine online immediately with photos of you and things like that. I think BPM, all these things were behind. Well, they probably didn't even put them online, or if they put them online, they were just up for a very short period of time because I've maintained my own servers. I've been able to keep the article about you. It's still there to this day. Basically, you can see you in my dorm room, using your laptop and this kind of thing. It's very, it reminds me of a lot of stuff when I look at it, basically.
Yeah. So, what was your impression of me when I went to Australia and I met you?
You were very different. You were very unique. And certainly when we have a mutual friend, Craig, when Craig and I met, we immediately became kind of kindred spirits because we both had known you, probably for only a few number of years then. But certainly in our friendship, Craig has been a central figure. And certainly when it came to the book, I've been trying to get a book written about you for at least 20 years because I think there's an obvious book that's there. There have been various people that have touched on aspects of your life, but no one had actually catalogued it the way Craig did. And I think it
Greg was
was
the only one that really had the tenacity to stick through it all.
exactly, because it's your life is quite complicated. It's got a bunch of nuances. Certainly, I was really impressed with just the breadth of people that Craig was able to interview, and obviously the amount of good faith, basically, that these people put in the interview process and the amount of trust they had in Craig, in particular. Because I
Plus,
find
I
the
had
whole
a 16-hour time difference.
certainly,
Working through that time difference has been a real hassle.
yes,
And the fact that I was able to get a Zoom meeting with myself, with Aaron over in Thailand,
mhm,
Craig in Spain, and I'm in
yes,
the US. The three of us got together on a Zoom call and we did this amazing video. And Craig is right now in the process of editing it. So be on
certainly.
the lookout for it soon.
Will do. Will do. So anyway, through you, I've made a number of friends. Probably one of the most curious of those friends was who we kind of overlapped our friendship for a period of time. When I moved back so from interviewing you, I eventually moved back to the or moved to the US, not back to the US. It feels like moving back to the US, but moved to the US in about 2000. And I think we had interactions then when I came back in 99. I think we had interactions then. There are ongoing,
I had just come from the East Coast, just back from India.
certainly. And you had that Indian thing going on, which I don't know where that ended, but I remember corresponding with you
I was
through.
there for 3 months.
Yes. But what came out of that in terms of actual company-wise or technology-wise or that
Well,
kind of stuff?
this guy Samvit, who brought me over to India, was offering me to do work for him. He is wealthy because of his dad works for a chemical dye company. So he gets me invited to India. So I arrived in Mumbai at the designated time. He was supposed to have met me. It turns out that he fell asleep.
Oh no.
I had to stick around, somehow make contact with him. I did not have a mobile phone at the time, so I had no other way for him to reach me. So I kind of stuck around near the airport trying to figure out what's going on. In the meantime, all these Indian hucksters were trying to hit me up for just about anything.
Yes.
And so we finally hooked up, takes me to his parents' place. Nice, big, lavish house, security, everything like that. Really nice, modern furniture, but furniture from like rare furniture from like
Certainly.
Africa and stuff like that.
Yes.
I said, wow, this guy must be in the money. It turned out that his dad won't let him have any of that money that he's supposed to get. So he had to kind of work on his own. So I was surprised that he was supposed to cover my flight, and it never happened. So I had to eat the cost of the flight. He wanted me to go down to Goa, where he wanted me to work with a company called UVI Tours. And so I went down there with him, and I had to go down there on my own. He couldn't even do that. So he puts me on this long, long bus ride, hot, sweaty, no air conditioner,
Oh yes.
crowded beyond belief, very uncomfortable bus ride. I get down there. I went to the hotel where I was supposed to, go in there, and he had covered the hotel fee and hotel everything, which turned out not to be true. I still wound up eating the cost of that too.
Yes.
Then I met some people who were part of the, let's see, this guy his name was Jay Wadia.
Hmm.
Jay was this very rich person, and he basically rescued me, got me back into Mumbai where I could leave. He was part of who was that rich person that covered a lot of the media in Mumbai?
Not sure. Not
Can't
sure at all.
remember his name. Anyway, so he was the one that helped me out a little bit. So he got me in the hotel room. I was struggling trying to get this website done. Website was to a pizza company in
Certainly. I
Delhi.
remember that well. Yes.
You drag and drop the items of the pizza onto the pizza,
Yes.
and it would tell you up the total cost on the food that you added to the pizza.
Certainly.
And so I stayed in that hotel for like maybe 2, 3 weeks, and I went around to various different places near there. I wanted to go to the Himalayas. I wanted to get up to maybe Lukra,
Yes.
or possibly go to what's it called?
Kathmandu. Yes. Yes.
Kathmandu. I wanted to go to Kathmandu. I didn't get much support from Soundbit. He didn't like the mountains because he was very sensitive to altitude.
Certainly.
And so after I came back from India, Soundbit wanted to go to the Burning Man.
Yeah, no, I remember that because I've met him and I remember that whole legacy
Yeah.
associated with that. Yeah.
So we eventually go to Burning Man, and he was not used to the climate. It was to him, it was beyond what he could stand physically.
Yes. Yes.
He had to leave because it was just very uncomfortable for him,
Yes.
because it was very raw. It was very like, at Burning Man, thing is, if you mess up, you die. It's that
Yeah,
simple.
certainly.
You
Certainly.
don't bring enough water, you're gonna die of thirst.
Certainly.
If you get caught out on the playa with your car gets stuck in the mud, you ain't getting rescued. There was one instance where I was at Burning Man where somebody was just wanted to prove the fact that he could drive without touching the steering wheel for 20 minutes. So he aimed in a direction that was hopefully not anybody there. He started driving out the way out in the deep playa, and he got to the point where all of a sudden he ran into this thick gooey mud, and his car got bogged down to the axle.
Yes.
There was nobody there to rescue him.
Yes. Yes.
He was stuck. He didn't bring enough water. One of the pilots observed him. So as there were some planes flying by, and he was standing up on the hood of his car, waving at the planes, one of the pilots observed it, and the pilot contacted the Danger Ranger, they call him. This is a guy that's self-appointed ranger who would tell people with things that were related to the sheriffs and things like that. So they got somebody out there to rescue the guy. It was very lucky that he got rescued.
Yes.
Another 2 or 3 hours, he would have not been able to live. He was pretty dehydrated.
Certainly. Certainly.
There were quite a few deaths at Burning Man.
Yes. Yes. No.
There was, I don't know whether you remember this guy, this DJ called Omar.
Mm.
He was staying at Rave camp in a tent, and some local yokos were driving around in their desert vehicles, ran into the tent, and well, the guy was paralyzed for life, and
Yes.
him, and 3 other people were killed.
Yes.
No, and at that time there really wasn't a whole lot of control there. And after that incident at Burning Man, they decided to be a lot more controlled.
Certainly.
Before I could go to Burning, I could go there 2 or 3 days earlier, find myself a camp, get situated, and I wouldn't have to pay to get in.
Interesting. Interesting.
But after that, they started to being very, very, very controllable.
Certainly.
And now you can't even way out in deep play. If you come in that direction, you can't come in that direction because 5 miles out from the main camp was at the fence at Deep Playa, and it was being monitored all the time by the police and by the sheriff.
Certainly.
And they've got night vision goggles, so it was easy for them to find people there.
Certainly. Certainly.
And I went to 10 or 15 burns. I don't remember how many I went. There was quite a few.
Certainly.
I was like the permanent resident of Black Rock City.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love that event. It's so, and right now, today, Burning Man is a rich man's folly.
It certainly is.
Tickets have
Yes.
increased to the point now where it's over $1,000 to get a ticket.
Yes.
This year was the first year where they did not sell out of tickets.
Yes.
And now when you go, you have to if you wanted to bring a tent, they would put your tent way out in the outer lands, and you're like about 5 miles from center camp. A
Yes.
long ways. You have to have a bicycle at that point
Yes.
to even get around.
Definitely.
And you had to pay $100 for your car, and you didn't have a camp that you had to stay. I stayed at Mobility Camp. Mobility Camp is designed for those people that have mobility issues,
Certainly.
because I was not really able to do a lot of walking. Although I could walk at that point, I couldn't really do much. And in the second year at Burning Man, I also went to Mobility, but I was much in better shape. But I volunteered my services at Mobility Camp.
Mm.
I would act at the front desk there to talk to people coming in, asking about where they can go to charge their wheelchairs and stuff like that,
Certainly.
And that was the last day that I went to a really amazing rave, really danced. I had everybody coming up to me wanting to know who I was.
Yes.
It was crazy.
Well, you certainly have that reputation in Australia as well. The South Australian AdRave, they produced a video that you were in two of the raves there, and you basically just appear.
Do you have any video of me in that rave?
No, I don't know what happened to the AdRave videos I had. I could probably find someone who still has them. I don't think I have the AdRave one specifically. I don't think
When I
that's
was in
one.
the rave scene, right? There were
Yes.
no iPhones. The internet was just starting to go into public.
Yes. No, it's
public
the VHS tapes. I had a VHS tape, and honestly, I don't know what happened with it. But I'm back in contact with people who are still part of AdRave, and I'm pretty sure that they'd have digital versions of it now because they were the first AdRave tapes basically that came out.
I would really like to get some pictures. If not me in the rave, at least some of the rave things that I can use as B-roll for some
Certainly.
YouTube videos.
Certainly. Well,
I thought I was going to get a lot of content in that area, but the person that was supposed to give me that content kind of, faded away. I had lost contact with him.
Well, I'm in contact with a few people who are still connected with AdRave, so I can certainly put out the word, John, and see what they have available.
Which rave was that?
There were a series of them in Adelaide. You went to Adelaide for, I think, about a week. You camped out with the couple of friends of mine. Again, the people that you meet become my friends relatively quickly. So I was thinking Nick Gaffney and Mark Simpson. Mark Simpson still remembers you quite well. I was talking in a video recording about your I can't remember whether it was AdRave or just having you here in Australia rather. And he said that was he thought it was the early 90s, and I said, no, it's 1995. And then it came back to him in memories.
There was one Australian that came to visit me. He messed up and went into Mexico when he wasn't supposed to. He got a visa for the U.S. When he came back to the U.S., they told him that he had to go up to show up to court to deal with why he re-entered the U.S. illegally.
Yes.
He stayed in my apartment in Burbank for a while, and then he got arrested. He was going to be my roommate, so of course I had to move out. I think his name was Patrick.
This is where the kind of story becomes Craig's story, because obviously I knew you from the Australia times when I moved back to the US, or when I moved to the US, more importantly. Obviously, I knew about you as well, and I remember you taking me around Berkeley, which was fascinating because you knew all the Captain software was based in Berkeley. So you knew all the streets, you knew all the locations. You had stories basically for every turn signal we had to make in Berkeley. You remembered things about the Captain software, which I found absolutely fascinating.
We had our offices on Channing Street,
Certainly.
block away from Telegraph Avenue, three
Yes.
blocks away from the UC campus.
Yes. Yes.
Our corporate offices. That was a day, man. Hang
Mm,
out at the Mediterranean Cafe or the other cafes there. And
certainly.
I
Certainly.
spent a lot of time at that cafe working on Easy Writer.
Yes, of course. Of
I
course.
didn't have a computer then. I was just doing the code by hand.
Yes. Writing it in a book. Yes.
Well, the development of Easy Writer was a very interesting thing that happened. I was on the work furlough program, and Judge Peckham was the judge that sentenced me to the work furlough program. It was 3 months in the work furlough program, and I would go to Alameda work furlough program office there.
Yes.
I got to the point where the gas crunch was happening.
Mm.
I ride my bike to did my so-called work. Now, I had no job, so I had to figure out that I needed a job. Ran across these people in Berkeley called the Receiving Studios. It's a practice space where they all practice music and stuff.
Certainly.
Called it Receiving Studios only because there was a signer that said receiving on it. And so they said, well, why don't you come here and you could help us with some programming and stuff. I said, sure. So I had to give them money that they would give back to me because then they would write a check for my work. See what I mean?
Yes.
And they would have the letterhead of Receiving Studio on it because that was where my so-called quote unquote job was.
Mm.
I'd go there, work on Easy Writer. Woz gave me a printer, and so that's when I could do that proportional spacing with the Diablo printer.
Certainly.
So then at the end of the day, or about maybe hour before I had to go back to jail, I would print out a whole listing of a fresh listing of the code,
Hmm.
take it back with me, and then I would just go back over to jail and I just look over the code like that. I would scribble on the paper that I knew where my mistakes were, go back over the stack diagram, in my head.
Certainly.
What's wrong? This is wrong. I corrected the things, went back, made the corrections, and all the corrections worked. So it was an ideal situation because I'd be away from the computer long enough where I had this forcing me to like look at a printout of the code. Whereas before you used on the screen, right? Not anymore.
Yes.
Back then I had to only go by the printout. I took the printout back to jail and then right after chow I'd go into my room and sit at the desk, go through my source listing until I was tired and went to bed. At the morning they'd pick me up and they'd take me back to the jail, either by bus or I could ride my bike there.
Yes. Yes. So we're now in probably the early 2000s.
That was during no that yeah that
Oh,
was
no, I know. That's much earlier. That's much earlier. I'm talking about when you and I knew each other, going back to the discussion. Um,
okay.
so yeah, obviously Easy Writer is, considerably earlier history. One of the things that I found very interesting was that you provided me various contact points for Woz initially when I used to come to the US just for working, or working with Apple or something like that. And the second time I was here, I was able to meet Woz, which was based on your recommendation amongst other people. And that really changed my whole experience of the tech industry. And also, you were still very much involved with Steve's general entourage. And there were lots of adventures involving you in some capacity through that period of time.
Right.
But I ended up moving back I was in Sunnyvale for a period of time. And through that period of time, I was hoping that we'd, finally get this book thing together that we'd been talking about. And certainly Craig was interested in as well. It took us about 18 years to actually get the book together. Well, probably about 15 years, because that's when Craig started it. But it was a very interesting time because you were just getting, I think you were just out of web crunchers, and you were perhaps moving towards the crunch box, but you hadn't quite gotten there yet. You were with, actually, more interestingly, you were with a group of people that were trying to do, I can't remember what they were doing. There was a fellow called Andrew. There was just basically a lot of, I don't know, talk, but not much action through that period of time.
You know about the Crunchbox?
Yeah, I'm talking about
With
just,
Dan Baguette and those people?
yes, yes.
Yeah, that was not the Captain Software. What was
It's
it
called
called?
web crunchers, and then the crunch box,
We,
then
we we called it Shop IP.
Shop IP. Yes, of course, of course. Yeah. So Shop IP covered a lot of stuff through that
Yeah.
period of time too.
And so I was doing a lot of the stuff with an open BSD box, building the IPS around Snort.
Certainly.
So when Snort detected an attack, it would decide what to do with the attack based on what it found to be a seriousness of the attack, and then automatically would shunt them over to like a honeypot or something like that, or over
Certainly.
some other thing
Yes.
like that. And they'd buzz around the honeypot and thinking that they got something. In the meantime, they're getting information on them.
Certainly. Certainly. And through that period, this is the part that was most heavily in the book from Craig's perspective. And I said, you've got to balance the history, because obviously you have a long history aside from Shop IP, web crunchers, these kind of things. So there was because I was there doing some technical editing, there was quite a bit of stuff which I think Craig wanted to have in the book, which I thought was not quite, up to, it's not of the same caliber as you being hit by a nuclear explosion, for example. So I thought, okay, there are clearly a lot of stories here. The stuff that Craig knew about with you was more dense, basically, in the book, and I came through and kind of edited it with Craig's assistance to make it more about your full history, where it wasn't just the
Oh,
kind
you were
of,
helping him edit the book. Okay.
yeah, I'm the technical editor. I'm agreed upon as the technical editor in the book. But
Were
he
you
and
living in the Bay Area at the time?
I probably was in, yes, I probably was. I moved from
Or in the
Vegas to the Bay
UK?
Area. So no, it wasn't when I was in the UK. It was well after then. So I guess
You had to
Craig's,
deal with that pesky 9-hour time change.
yes. Well, my life has always been revolving around time changes. It's rather ironic that you and I have ended up in the same time zone. Um, but
That was pretty bad.
So yeah, it was an interesting process that is kind of catalogued in certainly the latter part of the book. I can't. Tolga Costas, and Tolga's wife was, what was Tolga's wife called? It began with a C. Christina.
Okay.
So that period of time was, what was the fellow, Steve Innes. These kind of people were people that I communicated
Yeah,
with.
Steve Ennis was the CTO. He kind of took that away from me when I went to the Love Parade in Berlin.
Mm,
It was during a very critical time. I had just released for Dan to start, debugging and stuff like that. So he was sending me bug reports, and I've been working on the bug reports when I was in Germany.
mm.
And Steve Ennis took over my code without my permission, started modifying it without my permission.
Yes,
Never got a chance to see the source code. What really irked me was that Steve had put some backdoors in the code, which really upset me.
yes,
And not only that, but he had it set up so that you had to have a key to unlock the code to get it to work. Dan had swung a deal with a group of people that he met who landed a deal with the U.S. Naval Academy
mm,
to get a copy of not Easy Rider, but a copy of the Crunchbox to the U.S. Post Naval Academy.
yes,
But he was not supposed to have a code to unlock it. It was supposed to be unlocked permanently. But Steve decided to put the lock on it.
mm.
So during a critical time when they were trying to demo the Easy Rider with their not Easy Rider, the Shop IP
The
Crunch
crunch box. Yes,
with the people there, it would not work, and they couldn't get into it. In the meantime, reaching Steve Ennis was almost as bad as reaching Toga.
certainly.
I kept saying, Steve, you got to take out that key, otherwise we're going to lose this job. At that point, things got really crazy. Sylvia was pretty much in run of the company for a while before she passed, and then they had Vince was Sylvia's husband that took over the Shop IP Crunchbox development for a while. Then John Johnson came in and worked on it. At that point, I was out of the picture. I didn't want to have anything
Certainly.
to do with. At that point, I want to have anything to do with Crunchbox. Because
Yes.
number one, you don't sell to the government and lock it. You don't do that.
Yes.
And then 9/11 hit. I can remember during 9/11, Dan come rushing into my room. I was sound asleep. John, airplanes just crashed into the World Trade Center. And I thought it was just another ploy about Dan just get me to wake up early.
Yes.
And I rolled over, but I went back to sleep. He said, John, you got to do this. You got to get up. You got to get up and check this out. At that point, we didn't even have a TV hooked up yet. What I did was I went to the CNN.com website, and sure enough, they had the picture of the Trade Center burning and all that. Oh my God, this is really true stuff. And all the media everywhere, all over the USA, there's nothing but the 9/11.
Yes.
All the stations completely stopped broadcasting their normal broadcasting for 3 weeks.
Yes.
And that was during the 9/11 part. And at that point, we were going to go to Chicago to meet with the head of Bank of America to give a demonstration of the Crunchbox security thing there. We had it all set up. I was going to stay back. Dan was going to go with his other friend who was helping deal with the Bank of America people. And all flights were suspended at that point.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yes.
So then what eventually happened was Dan takes me, he says, we got to drive to Chicago to deal with this Bank of America people. I said, drive to Chicago? I said, yeah, we got on the way to get there. So I said, okay. So we stopped by Las Vegas and Dan meets up with some friends, earns some money from the gambling and enough to fund the gas for the trip. I had no money at all practically at that point. There was no money coming in for the Crunchbox. So we went and started our drive all across the country.
Yes.
We finally get to Chicago. At that point, the weather started getting really cold. And as I remember correctly, we tried to arrange for the Bank of America people, but since the 9/11 happened, they weren't interested anymore.
Yes.
So we decided that the only way that we can deal with getting the Crunchbox out in the market was to play its security aspects to it. And we pivoted our focus toward national defense, toward, that 9/11 stuff.
Certainly.
And that never worked out that well either. So
John, unfortunately, I have another call on the hour. So it's been a real pleasure chatting, but I'd like to
about
talk
8
the
minutes.
opportunity. Certainly, I've got to get a bunch of stuff together for that chat. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you. We need to do it again just to cover some of the lesser known stories of your life and things like that. So if
All
we
I
can
need
work
is a
out.
prompt. You prompt me, we'll talk about it.
Very
That's how it
good.
works for me.
Definitely, definitely. Anyway, John,
I'm
it's
like
been
ChatGPT, you prompt me and I tell you the answers.
very good, very good. Anyway, thank you for getting me back this video. And we need to do this again, John, because we only covered about a fifth of what I wanted to talk about today. So anyway, John, it's been a pleasure as always. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tom, for the opportunity. I appreciate that.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Later, man. Bye-bye.